Hello everyone, this is Ilenia from Sardinia, Italy, and this is my second assignment for the internship program at Heritage for All. The topic of the second assignment is heritage preservation and rural communities, and the story I'm going to tell you is about community, heritage and identity, and talks about a temporary exhibition at the museum in my hometown. Imagine that one of the most iconic archaeological objects of your area was found in the countryside around your hometown and has ever since been displayed at the National Archaeological Museum of your country. Now imagine that that object is exceptionally loaned for the first time to the Civic Archaeological Museum of your hometown for a week. So now you have half of the ingredients of this story. This story is set in a rural area called Tregenta, not too far from Cagliari, the capital city of Sardinia, and involves many characters. In 1935, while working on the fields in an area called Turriga, a farmhand from Senorbí, Mr. Stefano Cardia, found a curious object that he brought home. It was a 45 centimeters anthropomorphic white stone. Some time had passed, and his younger son contracted an illness. Therefore, he needed to be visited by a doctor. So the doctor came, Mr. Massimo Curado, and it is said that when he first saw the stone, he asked the farmhand whether he could take it, and Mr. Cardia agreed. Later, Mr. Corrado contacted his old friend and archaeologist Piero Cao, who is the first man who studied this item, and in 1938 he published the first scientific publication about it. This episode marks the beginning of the musealization process of such idol. However, the purpose of this assignment is not to tell you about this process. Rather, we will examine how this idol was displayed, is displayed in the National Archaeological Museum of Cagliari and how it was displayed and, let's say, still displayed at the Civic Archaeological Museum Domu Nosta in Senorbí as a result of a collective effort and successful cooperation between the small local museum and the National Archaeological Museum, Sardinia's museum network, and the municipality of Senorbí. In 2018, the goddess, as later it was called, came home for a short temporary exhibition. The musealization process I was telling you earlier allowed the anthropomorphic stone to be identified as a, let's say, a goddess, an idol. And since it was found in the rural area around Senorbí called Turriga, then this idol was called the Turriga goddess, in Italian la dea di Turriga, or she's also known as the Mater Mediterranea. Starting from the legends around her accidental finding, the museum reconstructed a whole sequence of events. A set of interpretive panels hung on the walls surrounding the case containing the idol. Their focus was not the archaeological data per se, but the story of the people who found the statue, interpreted and studied her, finally displaying her at the National Archaeological Museum of Cagliari, and the people who were inspired by her as the Sardinian artist Costantino Nivola. At the National Archaeological Museum of Cagliari, the goddess is usually displayed in a set of cases with a number of other female idols that are conventionally called mother goddesses. All of these statues have some features in common. Regardless of their size and materials, most of them are busty, with curvy hips and prominent buttocks. However, although they are called goddess, Venus, or Mater, as I told you earlier, Their true identity and purpose is still unknown because there's not any surviving evidence, written evidence, to provide such information. As reported by an interpretive panel at the National Archaeological Museum of Cagliari, which is one of my favorite panels ever, any artifact from the past attracts our attention and its meaning might be affected by the professional's attention and interpretation. When interpreting objects, individuals often tend to listen to their own voice. This means that individuals, no matter their level of expertise, usually interpret archaeological objects based on their own set of knowledge and symbols, rather than allow the object to speak for itself. And this is especially true for those objects dated so far back in time that any written surviving evidence can be retrieved for us to know exactly what their purpose was. However, the purpose of such display at the museum in Cagliari is to give visitors an overview on the evolution of the iconographic representation of the female idols through time. Thus, the Turriga goddess is seen by visitors in the broader context of Sardinia's history in a time span going from the 5th to the 4th millennium before Christ. And of course, when she was loaned to the Archaeological Museum of Domu Nosta in Senorbí, the context in which the statue was displayed was completely different. She was at the center of a small room completely devoted to her story, surrounded by all the interpretive panels telling the stories of men who studied her and allowed her to become such an important idol for Sardinia's history and culture. However, comparing the two displays was not intended by this assignment as a comparison basis to state that one is better than the other. Although it might sound obvious, it should be noted that the two museums differ in size, purpose, and focus. Therefore, having the goddess displayed in a single dedicated room was made possible by the architecture of the Archaeological Museums of Domu Nosta and the rethinking of the whole permanent exhibition due to the restoration works that had ended a few months before the temporary exhibition held in between July and August in 2018. And when the temporary exhibition ended, the goddess returned to Cagliari, but the Archaeological Museums of Domu Nosta decided to include all of their efforts for this temporary exhibition in the museum's permanent collection, only replacing the original idol with a copy. In this way, the museum has preserved not only the story behind an archaeological finding that is relevant to the local community, but also the memories and relationships between the people involved in the story, as well as the collective memory and debate around such an important event for the whole community. In addition, a publication was issued and freely distributed by the museum to all visitors upon request, although I must make you note that both the panels and the publications are currently available only in Italian. Maybe in the future they will also be in English. When the temporary exhibition ended, the goddess returned to Cagliari, as I was telling you earlier. However, the Archaeological Museums of Domu Nosta decided to include the temporary exhibition in the museum's permanent collection, only replacing the original idol with a copy. This means that you can still enjoy her story if you ever come to Sardinia and visit Senorbí. Thank you for listening. The last thing that I want to tell you is that the Turriga goddess became very popular thanks to a temporary exhibition on Sardinia's ancient and modern art held in 1949 in Venice, where a total of 60 small bronze statues, known as bronzetti, a small model of Anurage and the Turriga goddess, described as found in Senorbí and called Mater Mediterranea for the first time, were displayed. In addition, the first 2 pages of this exhibition's catalogue were dedicated to the Turriga goddess. After Venice, this exhibition traveled through Italy and Europe, and later further publications in French and English allowed the broader international audiences to learn more about the goddess. In just 5 years after its finding, the idol had become a symbol strictly connected to Sardinia, and locally it represented one of the 2 iconic symbols of Senorbí. Popularity allowed also this symbol to reach out to a broader public, but also Sardinian migrants in different parts of the world. And learning about this statue must have reinforced their identity as Sardinians and their sense of belonging to their own local communities, although they were far away from them. Among them, there's Costantino Nivola, who is a Sardinian artist for whom migration has been a relevant part of his life. And his set of sand-casting cruciform female totems realized in 1950, which stylistically and iconographically recall the Turriga idol, is a remarkable example of what I'm trying to say. Costantino Nivola was born in 1911 in a small town approximately in the center of Sardinia. He was a teen when he first left his father's house to join the artist Mario dell'Italia in Sassari, in the north of Sardinia, to complete the decoration of the lecture hall at the university. He was 20 years old when he left Sardinia for the first time to attend the Istituto Superiore per le Industrie Artistiche, literally translated as roughly Higher Institute for Artistic Industries, in northern Italy, and there he graduated as a graphic designer in 1935. He was 22 years old when, in 1938, the year when Italy enforced its racial laws, he was forced to flee Italy to France first and then in the United States later because of its anti-fascism and his marriage with Ruth Guggenheim, the eldest daughter of a Jewish family. As highlighted by Massimo Casagrande during the Sardinia Arche Festival held in Cagliari last July, individuals strongly feel a sense of ownership and identity towards their heritage, especially when they lose it, unfortunately. And this might have possibly been the trigger for Nivola's artistic production, particularly popular for his female sculptures that can be seen also in Cagliari's decoration for the Regional Council building and at the Nivola Museum in Orani, his hometown.